Welcome to the Relocated South African, the show for navigating immigration from South Africa for a better future. I'm your host, Jan Hugo from Lagos in Portugal. Check out our website, www.therelocatedSouthAfrican.com. It contains a whole lot of useful information and details of all episodes to date. If you want to interact with us or comment on our discussions or participate in an interview, please contact me on jan@therelocatedSouthAfrican.com. Also, if you like our content, why not subscribe on your favorite platform? Today, a welcome from Copenhagen in Denmark, Kurt De Bique. Welcome, Kurt.
Thank you, Jan. Great to be here.
Is that the correct pronunciation?
That's perfect. Absolutely perfect.
So Kurt's my first guest from Copenhagen or Denmark, so we're making history today. And I always ask my guests, Kurt, to give us a bit of history. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? Your schooling, university? And maybe lastly, how did you get to live in Copenhagen?
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be here, Jan. So I'm a Cape Town boy. Grew up in Cape Town, particularly initially on the Cape Flats area in Mitchell's Plain. And when I was around 5 years old or so, there was an incident in front of our home where my dad walked outside and there was some gangsterism going on, and this guy looked back at him and actually threatened him to just get back inside or else, something will happen. And he always talks about that moment. He said, okay, that was a pivotal moment where he needed to kind of make a decision knowing he's got a young son. And we then moved to the total, probably opposite side of Cape Town, to an area called North Pine, which is close to, it's kind of between Kraaifontein and Brackenfell, out in the northern suburbs. Yeah, and this was an area which was very new, fresh, so there wasn't any real social issues. It was actually a fantastic environment to kind of grow up in and be able to have a level of freedom in that little community. It was like a little incubator community that was new and fresh for us. And then I attended school in the area. Kind of grew up in the Brackenfell, Bellville area. Went to Brackenfell High School, matriculated there around 2000, and then moved out to Goodwood initially with my family. And then when I got married, we lived out in the Milnerton area, Blouberg, and spent, I think, before we moved to Copenhagen, we were there for about 12 or 13 years. So it was really the Brouwerkstrand area, Sunningdale area. I'm married. I've got two little girls, 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. We've, schooling side university, we went to UCT. I've also done a master's at Marty's, and my career was one of working in the human resources field. So I've worked in the HR field for the last 20 years, mostly for big multinational organizations, Chevron, and then most recently with Maersk. And that's been an amazing experience for me because it opened up many, many doors. I remember as a little boy, I had an aunt that moved to Port Elizabeth, and from time to time we would go and see her off, and the whole family would go and see her off on this long journey that she would take from Cape Town to P on a plane. It would take like 50 minutes, but it was such a big occasion. And I was like, wow, someone in the family has actually moved out of Cape Town. Amazing. But I remember as a little boy having a feeling like, okay, I actually wouldn't mind that one day. I've got the sense that somehow I'm going to be getting on planes and be flying around, and I want to explore the world. So that was a seed that was planted in me very, very early. Working for international companies, that just grew. And I got my first taste of traveling to Dubai and seeing the Burj Khalifa being built, going to the States and so on. So my journey then became one of a fairly international one via my work, working globally, and I also lived in the US for a couple of years, 2013 to 2015. We stayed there for 2 years. My wife's worked in London, and then we came back to South Africa. And then with Maersk, has got a global headquarters here in Copenhagen, the big shipping company. They offered me a role in Copenhagen. So that's what it was work that brought me to Copenhagen. But it was also a kind of a deliberate decision to say, okay, we enjoyed actually living overseas. We enjoyed the opportunities it brought to us. We enjoyed traveling. There's a lot of aspects we can probably get into. What really struck me about coming to Copenhagen was initially the weather was not attractive, right? That's what everybody says.
Mm.
It's cold, it's dark, it's winter now. But I remember coming here on a business trip and going out for dinner one evening. And after dinner, it was probably must have been 11 p.m. or something. It was one of those late dinners. But there were so many people on the streets, and there were young people, and there were grannies, and they would take a train at that time of the night home. And it was so safe. And I could
Mm.
walk through Copenhagen with bicycles parked all over the place, not really people being bothered by it, in complete calm. And I thought, wow, I've got two little girls. I think this is a really good environment for them as well.
Mm.
Mm. So that was a big factor. And then career, and then just going on an adventure, knowing that let's explore, and we're in a season of our life that we'd like to do it.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to get into some of that detail. Kurt, just a question. You said you lived in the States. Which city were you?
I was in San Ramon, San Francisco Bay Area for
Okay.
about a year. I worked at Chevron's headquarters there, and then they moved me to Houston, Texas as well.
My kids lived in Houston. I must say they were in Katy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
They
Have you been to Houston? You've been
many
to visit them
times,
there?
yeah.
Many
Many
times. Yeah,
times,
yeah.
yeah.
We lived in the museum district area, which was lovely. And yeah, we've got
Yeah,
good memories of.
they've since moved to Dallas, but yeah, I
Okay.
enjoyed visiting. It's just a bit hot and flat.
It's very hot, I tell you, in the summer, and humid. I mean, it's super humid.
And I'm a cyclist, so I don't like flat. So only hills are bridges. So yeah, it's an
Yes.
interesting
Look, there's
trip.
a lot of cycling here, but you'll miss. It's flat, so you'll miss. You can go through forests, you can go on your trails, but yeah, I missed. I did a bit of mountain biking when I was in Cape Town. I honestly missed that aspect of just driving to Durbanville around the corner, going up down the winey states there, up and down. That was.
Yeah. Okay. Well, um, just to give a bit of background to the listeners, I contacted Kurt after he posted on Facebook in December about the family's journey, and we'll explore that in a little bit more depth. And I said before the interview to Kurt that I really loved his post because it resonates with me after so many episodes on the podcast. I think it's probably the most analytical and clear post about immigration that I have seen. I think we're going to explore some questions around that. So you made the point, the first point was that it is not for the faint-hearted. I always say it's not for sissies. I totally agree with you, but why do you say so?
I've moved a few times in my life. The first one, as I've kind of alluded to early on, when I started my career, it wasn't quite an immigration, but it was a big change. It was Cape Town to Pretoria, right? When I finished university.
That is
but
like
for me,
immigration.
it felt a bit like immigration. But it was for work, and it was for work opportunity. But that was such a massive thing. And I was single. So, of course, it was much easier. I needed just a one bed, book a plane ticket, and rock up and work. You fly the Sunday, start work the Monday. There we go. It was simple. It was easy. Of course, all the adaptation that are things I learned moving to Pretoria there was a whole bunch of learnings there. Then the second time we moved, I mentioned the States, and we were married, and it was, a little bit more difficult, but actually not that. My company did a lot of the prep work, and they made it an easy landing spot. But it was a house we needed to rent out. That was probably the most challenging thing, and we took very little with us. Our shipping allocation was a box, and so we stored everything else, and and it was a box and suitcases. We got two kids. We had two homes before we moved to Denmark. We had to sell those two homes, sell the two cars. We had to take kids out of school. We had to find, new schools, and you're limited because we also moved the middle of the year. So you're trying to find a place for your kids, and it was super tough. We moved from one day the kids were in the pool at home, lovely, comfortable home in Sunningdale. And the next day, like literally when we landed here, I'll never forget it. We went from those T-shirts to beanies and jackets, and we got picked up taxi, and we went off to our company had organized the rental for a couple of months. And literally, as we just get out, it's just pouring, rain. It's like, welcome to Denmark. This is the way it is. And we're still hoping no car. That was the other big thing. It was a long time since I didn't have a car. And we actually didn't have a car for like the first, I think, a year and 10 months. With two kids, I was used to dropping them in front of the school and having that kind of freedom. Now, public transport is amazing here, like it is in many parts of Europe. It's reliable, but still, when it's 0 degrees and you need to get your daughter to gymnastics and you need to leave the office and then cycle while the blistering cold is smacking you in the front of your face, you're praying very hard. What did I do here? Why did I do it? God help me. Where was this? Does not seem like progress. Like I thought this was supposed to be progress. I'm coming to Europe. What's this does not feel like progress, and it's all those early moments. And the kids are super resilient. Yes, they are. They love it here now. Now they don't want to go anywhere else. They make that very explicit. But they also had connections. They had friendships. Their grandma and grandpas back home. They had their friends inside the house. So it was actually an adaptation. And for them, the first 6 months was tough. So it's not for the faint-hearted. I think letting go and leaving and, being like Oprah Winfrey at home and giving all your cousins and friends, all your books that you've been keeping for years, all the caps, because that's never going to fit into your European place. You're expecting a much smaller place. So it's a process of letting go and then, okay, that rough first period, and that's part of it. And then you just need to build that, I call it relocation resilience. Like you got to dig deep.
That's a very good word. And we'll get a little bit more into more of that detail. You, said about your aunt leaving and getting on the plane, going to PE. So one of the questions I have is, if you go back to 3 years ago when you were all at the airport to say goodbye, can you remember that emotion and how you guys felt when that happened? And may I say, I assume that your wife and your wife were always on the same page with regard to leaving and traveling, because that's an important thing.
Yes.
But was it quite emotional to say goodbye to family?
Yes, it was. And yes, my wife and I have very much had the appetite very aligned to kind of explore. And she's been very supportive also, because most of the moves we've done has been as a result of my role. So she's been super supportive there, both in the US and in this one. And yes, I think, there's a couple of emotions that one feels when you do your traditional thing at the airport, which is you go sit in the spur, right? At least that's what we do. You go sit in the spur and you act as if everything is hunky-dory. And yeah, because you don't want to make too emotional for anyone. You know what your parents, family, both our wife and our parents were there. And so it is tough, but I think our parents, we also kind of prepared them. I think they were fully aware that we did have desires to also leave and explore, and they were very happy for us. And I think that helps a lot. So they weren't too clingy. They know we love them, and it's got nothing to do with that. They're looking at their grandkids and they're saying, okay, this is going to benefit them and benefit you guys, then go for it. So that actually helps a lot. And then, of course, we try and stay connected very closely on the phone, and we try and go home at least once every 18 months or whatever. So it's just navigating that in that manner.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I also, in your post, you talk about your faith and how important that is to you. Was that a big part of your decision making in going to Denmark and taking the family?
Absolutely. I think my faith has played a big role in all of my major decisions in life. And whenever I make a big decision, it's soaked in a lot of prayer. It's soaked in a lot of reflection. It's soaked in a lot of conversations with the people that are impacted. So it's it's a rock, because I think when you rock up in Copenhagen, you realize, listen, it's not like there's a massive crowd waiting for you. You're like, boom, you're on your own now. You got to have something deep that's going to hold you. So I'm a believer, and that's directed my decisions, my career. And the thing is also, you never know what you're going to get. Like, you think you're coming here for a job, like that's the door that opens. But for me, when you come from a point of faith, you believe you're on a bigger mission. You believe there's a bigger purpose. You believe there's something else God is gonna use you and plant you in some place, and there's gonna be connections, and there's gonna be It must be a bigger purpose, because why would I get selected for the opportunity and not someone else?
Yeah.
So it's yes, I put in the work, I do my thing, but I think there's an element of favor that allows me to get into those spaces. So and that's actually been a major part of us here, because while I was doing tax and immigration and all that kind of logistical things, my wife was looking for a church that we could land in. And, sit on the other side of the world, all you read is about weird laws that Sweden and Scandinavia are now trying to do. And you think it's this massive, it is a very secular society, and Denmark's known as a secular society. But actually, she found an amazing church that she started watching online. She said, listen, let's go visit there. And we visited there like the first week we were here. It's called Copenhagen. And like the moment we walked in, people were just welcoming. Danes were welcoming. Internationals were welcoming. Our kids, we felt like this is a great place. And that was just like, it was boom. We just immediately ticked the box, and we didn't go church hopping or anything like that. We just felt this was the place. This must be the place. And so we've been at this church involved in just the last 3 years. And it's probably been the biggest thing that's held us, right? Because there's relationships, there's connections, and it's half Danish, half internationals. I think there's 56 nationalities in the church, the pastor mentioned the other day. So you're not the only one. So you come into that space and you're like, okay, my friend from Singapore is here also on something. You meet a diplomat that is from whatever, some other country in Europe, and his kids, and they become friends with our family, and Europeans, non-Europeans, Africans. Actually, that's been a great place for us to just stay rooted and grounded, and kind of also renewed our faith, kind of deepened our faith.
That's excellent. I mean, and South Africans in that church, or are you the only South Africans, or the others?
No, there's actually also South Africans. There's a few. We've got a few South African friends in the church. Not many. There's probably 5 or 6 that I know. So it's not a massive South African population, but there's certainly a few of us.
Yeah, I think, coming back to the thing that this is not for sissies. One thing that I've found in a lot of discussions is the couple must be strong, because there are days when you're going to be down and she's up, and the other way around. Having a strong relationship, but then added to that, being anchored in your faith, I think is amazing. So let's just explore some of the more detailed stuff. You talked about the home that you've given up, and the accommodation. What is accommodation like in Denmark? Typical European small.
Look, there's the full range. Denmark you've got kind of the city center. Actually, it's not a massive city. That's what's actually super nice. It's calm wherever you go, right? So things are kind of nicely dispersed. There's a city, and then kind of from there you kind of go into the inner city. Those suburbs tend to be then next expensive, and then you kind of in that, let's call it that surrounding city, still within the proximity of the city, but you're in the burbs. Like we are like 20 minutes outside of, door to door from me to a workplace. It's so it's convenient, and of course, the closer you are into the city, in most cities, the smaller you're gonna get, and the more you're gonna pay per square meter. But we're fairly happy with what we found here. We've got a nice townhouse that gives. It's like 2 blocks of townhouses, and they go a few floors up, 3-4 floors. So we've got enough space, I think, for us. That it wasn't South Africa. It wasn't okay. I've got a massive bright porch, and here we go, and the kids can run around the house. But it's enough. It's 3-bed, 2-bath, and it's for us okay. We do miss a little bit more space because you're in Europe, and it's really at a premium. I think people are probably paying double what we paid for our 4-bedroom, 3-bath, pool, 600 on square place in South Africa. We're paying double that for 130 odd squares, 3 beds, and so on. So it's definitely expensive. It's probably your major cost. Most people, you spend between 30 and 40% of your money on that. So it's but it's and there's a lot of competition. Property prices over here are I'm not bought, but I mean everybody's like, people that get in say, listen, it's really worth the while. That really holds steady. But to your question, they are just across the road. There are some really large homes here, so not everybody is. I mean, that's mostly families, Danish families that have been here for generations, right? So it's there's certainly space. Like I'm amazed. I've been to some of my Danish bosses and colleagues' homes that have been here for a while. They've got some fairly expensive spaces, and so it's not like everybody's living in a box. Certainly not.
But a lot of people that I've spoken to, me included, have made the mistake of shipping furniture from South Africa to a great expense and finding that it doesn't fit in the smaller homes and the typical European homes.
Yes. No, that's exactly. So because I work for a shipping company, and I mean, I had a container as part of my deal. And I think also having two small kids and probably half the containers, I don't know, it's kids things or, okay, I'm not going to blame the kids. Look, we all got a lot of stuff and you decide, okay, how much? So we brought things in that container, but we also, because we weren't sure where we're going to live, we also gave a lot, like probably a double garage of stuff away just to friends and family. And because we weren't, so we brought the essentials. And then when we got here, the one thing, most thing, kind of fitted into the space, but the one thing was my massive corner couch that I got from Craft. And that was a mission. Like it wasn't going to fit in because it's quite a kind of a thin space. It goes up, but it's like the different rooms are. And we actually had to, it was no longer a corner couch. It was now going to be two, kind of horizontal couches. So the half is on top here and the other half is downstairs. And they couldn't, I had to coach these guys. I had to get this thing through my window over here behind me because they had to lift it up. And they were like, no, it's not going to work. We need to like get one of those cranes or something. I'm not going to hire a crane in Denmark. And so but we made it work and got half in. Our bed couldn't fit up on the third floor. So we had to, what they do is, we had to put it in the spare room, our guest room, but they do these, I don't know if they do it over there. Like they do like these two single beds that they put together and clip, and that becomes like a master bed, which is common here because a lot of people live in apartments. So we bought one of those.
Okay. From IKEA?
No, that was from some pet shop, but there's a lot of IKEA stuff here. There's, I think, IKEA, and it's, that's the other thing, right? Which is you don't get that domestic help that you get in South Africa. So, and I'm a keyboard warrior, right?
Me too.
And so when I came here and I'm like, okay, we need a new table. They need a new cupboard to put in here for the spec. I actually found it was fun eventually, but for the first time in my life, it's okay. You're the guy, buddy. You need to figure this thing out and just follow the IKEA step by step. And then you feel proud at the end of spending a full day putting a cupboard together.
No, we've done the same, my wife and I. She's very handy, but I do from time to time when there's more screws left than what should be. I start speaking Ukrainian, and because I'm not very handy. So we've had our fun with IKEA, but it's super quality, the stuff that you get from that from there.
Yes.
Anyway, could we briefly touched on the weather? People that I've spoken to in Norway said you don't have bad weather, you have bad clothing. Have you guys found the same now? Are you coping with the weather?
That's exactly the same saying, and exactly the same mantra. I think third year in, it actually is. You develop a strategy around it. You got to have the right clothing. So I think I'd mentioned somewhere, probably the most expensive jacket I bought in my life. I bought it here in Denmark, and it's full on, proper layered inside. Your KOA jackets are not going to work here. So that's that. I bring the KOA jacket out, for a chilly summer's evening. Yeah, you got to get the right stuff. And the kids have got thick layers of snowsuits. So it's fine. And people get on with their life. You'll find people that are runners, they run whole year, they put their kit on. Cyclists, they've got their kit on. So you get a lot of clothing options here that you wouldn't see elsewhere in the world. It's made for the conditions.
And winter sports, the kids skate and ski, or?
Yes, my kids are quite active. My daughter does gymnastics, so she did that in South Africa already. So she's done that for the last few years. So that's indoors, so that's fine. And then the outdoor thing she does is horse riding. So she does that. Very passionate about that. The other one is I've got a keyboard next to me. The other one is more musical, so she's more into music and so on.
Oh, awesome. That's fantastic. Another question, just with regard to, again, for the kids and you, I think in your post you mentioned that you're still working with Google Translate. How are the kids coping with the language?
They are very curious to learn this language. Now, we put them in international school. By virtue of that, it means, of course, most of their friends are going to be international, but they get Danish lessons. And then, of course, with extramurals, they get to mix with the Danes. In my workplace, I was never asked. No one ever said you got to learn Danish because it's an international company. So there wasn't a lot of pressure, but I think you hear and you realize, listen, you're missing out. So much correspondence is in Danish. So much, you see your neighbor, you want to be able to order coffee or something in Danish. So my wife and I both started taking Danish lessons the first year we were here. And then we felt so humble. We needed a break. It's quite a difficult. And now we've picked it up again. I'm actually started again. So they're getting better. We are all also on Duolingo. It's like a competition in the house. It's one of the first things that gets done after everyone is ready in the morning is to learn Danish on Duolingo. And then with the schooling, and I think but you got to be patient. My approach was never to force them. It was like, let's just see how it goes. But I can see my kids are naturally wanting to learn the language. I think probably at some point we need to decide, is the international schooling environment the best for them to really accelerate that? Because, it's like they gravitate back towards the English. So, we're figuring that one out still.
And what does the language sound like? Is it, I know the Norwegians and Swedish, and is it kind of similar?
My name is Kurt. Well, hello, do. Good to meet you. You would say Kotet Melodai, which is, good to meet you. And I would say Ilimol. I'll be like, likewise, maybe something is, you order a cup of coffee. Kenya for en cup of cafe. So it's some of the pieces are easier than others, but it's not always phonetic. So what you see is not always what you need to say. That's where it tricks up. You will see a D or something, and the way they pronounce is like, or like when you look at it, you're gonna go, So it's Afrikaans helps sometimes, right? If it's more phonetic than to our Afrikaans, but if it's like the way I live, you can Afrikaans can help, but then there's like the E is said differently and so on. So it's not an easy language. Most people that come here struggle with it. I've heard even like Europeans that come from Germany struggle with it. And they 5 hours, a few hours south, and apparently I thought it's supposed to be easier for them. But I've heard some Danish people, Germans even say, this is so different. So it's a tricky one.
Okay. Yeah. You also mentioned, it's always a surprise when you arrive in Europe with the cost of living and, the rand, even you initially think in ZAR. Was that quite something that you guys had to adapt to, not thinking in rands anymore?
Absolutely. I will not lie, it's very expensive here. And I know the rand has gotten stronger now. It's about at 2.5, 2.6 to the Danish krone. I think it was like that 5 years ago. So it's kind of gone back to that. But just the price of things generally are more expensive. And then everything is priced. Like your one of the pet peeves I have living here is you go to McDonald's and those sachets that you get for tomato sauce? The little sachet weighs like 2 scoops, you just and it's gone. That's like 4 krone. That's like 10 rand equivalent.
Oh no, so you got to pay for that.
Just for a sachet. So you got to pay for that. So like everything, nothing is free really. So everything is billed. Now, that's a small thing, but it's such an indicator of, listen, like everything, there's a value to everything. That's the way it is. And the value is higher. The value is we're not just going to give you a bunch of things. So when we came, I remember taking the girls, a wife out to this burger place, which is popular, called Gasoline Grill. And, we all had burgers, and I think it was the equivalent of probably 700 krone or something. So like 1,500 rand or something like that. Like for 4 burgers and 1 drink. So when that hits you the first time, because also remember the first time you come, you haven't earned your first salary yet. Like That January, I was living off my net bank credit card for that first month and of course, whatever I had in my apps, but the conversion is hitting you every time because you're using that. So after a while, yeah, you eventually that's just the price of things, and you just you accept. I mean, you go sit now in a restaurant, you order Coke in a glass, it's like the equivalent of 100 bucks. Um,
Exactly. Coffee.
so so when we
Coffee's
do go
expensive.
to coffee's 30, 40 krona. Yeah, exactly. But like now I'm thinking about, I don't actually think about it so much because of course I've earned in krona and you've adapted and but you got to actually be very a good steward of your finances here as well, because the other thing is, because you're looking at the digits, and for years your mind has said like 10 you see 10 krona, but that's not 10 rand. I mean, that's actually worth a bit more. So that's the one thing. And then people, well, at least I think you try and cook at home. That's where you save. You eat. When we go eat out, we take the kids for sushi. Family all love sushi. We go sit in a sushi buffet once a month, and we spoil ourselves the end of the month, and that's what we do. And then yes, we pick up street food here and there, whatever, but not like, hey, we're in the waterfront, let's go sit and have a steak. You don't do that on the fly.
No, I hear you. And just, I know that, is Denmark part of the EU or not really?
Yes,
But
absolutely. Part of
so
the EU.
do you use
That's
the
one,
euro?
that's one of the things they agreed that they would keep out of the agreement, which is they wanted to maintain their currency.
It's the same in
Yeah, the
Hungary
krone.
because they've
Yeah.
got the foreign, but
Yes.
do they have dual currency? Can people spend euro there, or is it really just
No, it's krona. It's
okay?
krona, and it's basically cashless here.
Okay.
So I probably draw money once every 3 months for something, and it's because the kids have got something at a school and I need to pay cash to buy a cool drink instead of. So everything is cashless. So you're not even getting into that.
Yeah. And just another question on the kind of daily life. One of the things that always comes up is just medical. And, do they have a very good state medical? Do you have private insurance? How does it work in Denmark?
Yeah. So it's the public healthcare system here is good, very good, apparently. I say apparently because I've not had to rely really on the health system too much, but it's got a very good reputation. I've got friends, got a, if they have babies here, that early care for like kids and mothers and that's like world class, phenomenal from what I hear, and also working in HR big people go through. And then I've got private backup with my company in the event that a public doesn't work. But I mean, the public hospital, that's like your standard. It's good. Most people go through that and get good care when they need it. Where it is very, very different is you don't just, after coughing for 3 days, go to your doctor and say, listen, I need a speedy recovery here, so give me an antibiotic. You don't. That's never going to work. So I actually hardly ever go to the doctor. When I'm sick, when I'm being sick, because they're not going to give you any medication, really. You can get over the counter, very basic stuff. So it's really, when do you need it? And that's a way of, I think, demand managing the system.
Okay.
It's thankfully we've not had. I've got friends that I know that have had mixed experience, like where they've had an emergency thing and they've really had to push and press to say, this is what's happening with my kid. I need that now. Like, don't triage me out and tell me to come back tomorrow. This is what they need. So I've heard that experience, and there are some stories like that, because you need to really push. But then when people have got care, they've been fine. My daughter, I think, just had a sprained ankle that was actually we were worried about, but they helped her with that. Other than that, it's been a basic cold. So I've not relied too much on the system. But if you need it, I've actually got a lot of confidence. A couple of doctors we've got as neighbors also we've spoken with. I think if you really need it, if you're in an emergency medical situation, I think you're gonna get great care from what I hear.
Yeah. Okay. And taxes, Kurt, VAT and income tax, is it very high?
Denmark is known to have very, very high taxes, and that funds the welfare state, that funds the public healthcare, funds the public schooling, funds the roads. And you can see it. The one thing about the taxes, you can see it. Like, we had snow last week. I'm talking the very next middle of the night, someone is coming and clearing your doorway pathway so you can walk out of it. the roads are being cleared, it's being taken care of. But taxes are high. They can range from anything from, and it's a progressive system, from 30 odd percent to 56%. So it's massive. For someone like me, I've been an expat. I've been on a preferential tax rate, which I get for a period of, I can get it for about a period of 7 years, which is around 33 or so. But it doesn't last forever. And then I've seen also people that then, of course, you need to adjust. You come off that, then you're like, okay, going from that to 56% is a big wake up call. But
Okay.
but yeah, but people generally I don't see the Danes complaining about taxes. It's of course a joke, but they know, like, if like the snow example, because snow, I'll call the municipality now, the issue needs to be sorted out now.
Yeah.
And it's sorted out, and it's
When you get value for it, you don't mind. And VAT, ours is
I think
21.
VAT is 25%.
Okay, so it's also high. Oh, that's like
Uh,
Europe wide.
That's very high, and you like, I don't think you realize it initially, because yeah, depending also on how things are advertised and the products, right? But then you go, there's that VAT, and there's something else I want to actually mention, which is I don't know if you got it in Portugal, which is the recycling is massive here, right? But they charge you for the bottle. So if I go buy a Coke or whatever, you pay that extra 2 krona, but then you can get it back and you recycle it. But you got to remember to go back and pop it into a machine, and then you get the money back.
Yeah, it's not like, I know it's like that in Ireland, I think. We don't have that here. But
Mhm.
I think that's a very good idea. Anyway, Kurt, let's just, if we can move on. I mean, in your post, and I think it's a great way of looking at it, you looked at the difficulty of giving stuff up, but what do you get in return? And we've
Mm.
spoken about faith. You've said that's made a huge difference. The other thing, professional growth from the perspective of you as a person, your wife working there, would you say it's you've grown a lot more than you would have in South Africa?
Yes, I think so. I think in my case, I've worked for a big global company, and I realize, like, okay, if I look internal, is maybe like there was one other job that I wanted to do, like in South Africa in the company, and if I move to corporate headquarters, there would be, at least a few more opportunities. So that's where my thinking was. And then also, when you look at the external market, I mean, yeah, there wasn't a lot of opportunities, I think, when I saw in South Africa also at the time. I'd get headhunted here and there for a job, but then there was probably a couple of things. The couple of things was, okay, are you going to go to Joburg to go and take that opportunity on? Because there was much more companies there, and I didn't want to do that from a family point of view. I wanted to stay in Cape Town. So that then maybe just also made it smaller. So I think coming here, it was okay. There's professional growth. Also, there's opportunities broader in Europe once you kind of land here. It's not easy, I must say, especially now also with in Denmark, it's actually very easy to hire and fire people. They make it very easy. So whereas as an HR professional, when I needed to dismiss someone, I would go through a very, very robust process where, from a labor relations point of view, before we get there, we've gone through everything. Over here, you can just rock up one day and say, okay. So so there's actually a lot of people out in the market. So the market is tough, but it's a flooded market with a lot of talent. That's the other thing. So there's opportunities, but there's a lot of talent also flying for those opportunities.
Chasing that, yeah.
But professionally, I think it was good. I moved from kind of an Africa-based role into a global position, a couple of global positions I've had since I've been here. And, you sit closer to key stakeholders and so on. My wife's a social worker trained in South Africa. She's working in the UK as a social worker. But then she kind of decided to pivot out of that when we had kids. She stayed at home, and then she ran a baking business, and then she was kind of a kindergarten teacher. Now she's an educational counselor at the International Business College. So her career has actually been better here as well.
Oh, awesome.
And being with her profession, I mean, it's highly underpaid in South Africa. She basically get the same benefits, most of the same benefits that I got in a corporate company, same amount of leave days, pensions, and that sort of thing. So career-wise, I think is better if you're kind of on that professional work stream for us.
Excellent. I mean, we've already spoken about safety, the cleanliness, the taxes, the value that you get. One of the other things that you mentioned, and sometimes people forget, is the travel and the proximity to Europe and the possibilities of traveling and taking your family around. You guys are obviously some form of residence permit, which allows you to travel in Europe. Is that right?
Yeah. So we're on like a Danish temporary residence permit, which we've got for a few years. And of course, it can be renewed. So that allows us, we've traveled around Spain. We like because, when you want to escape the Danish cold, a 2-hour flight to Mallorca is amazing. You land there and then, wow, okay, where was I like 2 hours ago? Now I can take my jacket off. There's sun on my face and it just lights. I mean, coming from Cape Town, we take it for granted.
Yeah.
And I know, look, you probably you're in a much sweeter spot there. We haven't been, I've been to Lisbon for business for a few times. I've not been to Lagos and those, but I mean, definitely you've got a much more closer climate to what we were used to.
Yeah, I mean, our climate is very much like Cape Town. I was saying this week, I went to play golf and it was 5 degrees when I left home. So it's pretty chilly, but then it warms up to 16, and the sun comes out. So you
Yes.
just got to take layers off. But yeah, it is,
Yes.
it's amazing. Kurt, we got to move on. Let me just ask you, is there anything you would have done differently in this process of moving to Denmark?
That's a good question. Maybe the schooling was a big stress point for us because that first few months our kids weren't settled well, and maybe just preparing a little bit, preparing them a bit more for that shock, and maybe investigating more of the options in that space because you're actually you're quite limited, and that's because I think in South Africa you got a lot more options from an education point of view. You've public, private, different schools with different history. You land in a new place, you're like, okay, there's 2 or 3, and you just have to like go with it. So I don't know that. And then I think the other thing about the schooling is it's like, in South Africa, your sports, your cultural activities, everything revolves around the school. So that's nice. It's a nucleus. It all goes. You come here, it's the school is predominantly for the academics and social, and you've really got to think about, okay, so where do you want to go? Where? So what does your kid interested in? You got to get them into a club here and a club there, and it takes time. Like there's waiting lists to get into activities. We had to wait for a waiting list to get into gymnastics. All these kind of things we maybe took for granted. We could prepare a little bit better for that. I think from a skills point of view, it's when you come here, your work is very much as a temporary resident, your work is very much your reason for being is very much tied to that work. And you cannot take that for granted. You really have to think through that, know that okay, that's what you're going in for. That's the open door. It's not one of those places where they hand out your PR, permanent residence, after just boom, few years. You've got to demonstrate, okay, integration, proficiency in the language. You've got to be, I think the normal timeline is like 8 years before you become a PR, permanent resident. So you've got to, if you want to stay a longer term, you've got to really work on, okay, day in and day out. This is the long-term game and you've got to be patient. And that can be very unsettling, because you're like, okay, you feel like you've settled, you're in a place, you got a car, kind of know the place, but legally it's still a long process for you to actually fully integrate and so on. So Denmark is it's not the easiest place to integrate to, and you got to realize you got to adapt to that. But you can't take it personally. Just got to, your neighbors will be polite with you, but you're not going to engage in long conversations about this, that, and the other like you would with your neighbors in South Africa. So you just got to prepare yourself for that.
Good. What do you miss most about South Africa?
I think I miss the warmth of the people. It's just, and it hits you when you come to South Africa, and it doesn't matter where. The moment you get in the airport or someone wants to help you with something, they start chit-chatting in the taxi and you go, sit somewhere, have a restaurant, and that vibe that we have is truly special. I think the first year I managed to get some of that because it was the Rugby World Cup. We won this Rugby World Cup, huh? So well, I went over to Paris. I went over to Paris and watched a couple of the games, the opening game against Scotland and then the semi-final. And that was so cool because, getting into the train there in Paris and it was just green all around you and the accents were just going. And so, and then we've got a little bit, I know there's like a South African pub here where people go and we watch the games together. And that's amazing. So you get some of those home. But of course, you miss that on a day-to-day basis. I do miss the mountain. You've got the mountain up here. It's always a part of me, right? I lived in Blouberg where I had that massive wide-angle view of Table Mountain. I miss seeing that mountain, and I miss being able to hike up there and take sit near the mountain biking. I miss, and then of course we miss family and friends of that are convenient. But you make your own decisions and your trade-offs, and then you make the most of this new way of living.
No, that's very true. I had a guy on the podcast a few weeks ago who's very passionate about rugby. He says his goal is to make South Africa win 5 of the next 10 World Cups. But
yes,
and the same story about being in Paris and seeing the rugby and feeling really South African when they win. It's really good place to be.
Absolutely.
Listen, in closing, I mean, you probably don't have it in front of you, but I have it from your post. So just the way you ended your post, if you'll allow me to read it to the listeners, because I think it really speaks to you and to what you've experienced. So is it okay if I read that?
Yes, go for it.
So Kurt says, he ends his post on Facebook, "We love South Africa. While having values, ambitions, experiences, and adventures we feel worth pursuing abroad. Looking ahead, we are still learning, still adapting, and still discerning what the future holds, but we will continue living in the present. This journey has stretched us, shaped us, and clarified what matters most. It has shown us that we are resilient, can let go of known comforts, adapt, and embrace the new. Every major life decision has pros and cons, and most will not see the tough, non-Facebook post-worthy days. Life is short. Be intentional. Discover and identify the life you want to live and pursue it with conviction." I think that's just awesome. Well done.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey. And I really, really enjoyed talking to you. I knew it was going to be a good discussion having read this. And I think you're doing great. And, your faith and your family, and it shows you can make it work anywhere. Well done. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate that, Jan. And yes, we are South African. We can make it anywhere. Thank you. I wish you well. I'm loving the podcast, and I actually went through quite a few of the episodes last night, and it's also opened up doors for me because now I'm reading about other South Africans across the world and the experience. I think what you've created here is a fantastic platform. So thank you for that. We are indeed all over the place, all over the world, and we bring something special to the places that we in.
Excellent. Thank you, Kurt. If you enjoyed my discussion with Kurt and would like to hear more about experiences of South Africans who have left South Africa, why not subscribe on your favorite platform? If you'd like to share your own story, contact me on jan@relocatedSouthAfrican.com. Until next time.